Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast. For our last show before the mid-season break, before we take our mid-season break, we've got three matches to talk about. We've got Royal Challengers Bangalore. They lured us in. With a story of hope and expectation, and then they did the classic RCB move and blew it to one of the worst teams in the league. Yesterday, Mumbai Indians, they took on Gujarat Titans, and, I say took on, they capitulated. They got battered. And then on Monday, it was an insult to cricket, that game, as Delhi Capitals overcame Sunrisers Hyderabad. I'm Jack Hope. I'm here. I'm doing good. We've got no Max, we've got no Ross. They're busy packing. And we've got Dan Weston in a car in Vegas. How you doing, Dan?
Yeah, I am good. I'm packing tomorrow to come home. So, not the same as them. What are they doing? Couples holiday or something?
No, we're all going to Lisbon with some friends to
Okay.
drink wine, have some. What's the Portuguese for beer? Beja?
I don't know. That's what it is in
Something like
Spain,
that.
isn't it?
Yeah, something like that, and eat seafood or steaks, depending on I think. But yeah,
Great sound better.
yeah, depending on what you're into. It should be good. So I think we picked a decent time in the tournament to go. It's a little bit of a shame that the last show before our mini break, and we'll be back on Monday if anyone's wondering. We're just missing Friday. It's a bit of a shame that we've got three of the less exciting games of the season to talk about. But should we get into it, Dan?
Let's do it.
Right, today, if you're watching tomorrow, yesterday, Royal Challengers Bangalore, they took on Kolkata Knight Riders. As I said, RCB looked like they, worked some things out. Admittedly, the main thing that they'd worked out was that Kohli, Faf, and Maxwell should score all the runs. But they were on an upward trajectory. Kolkata Knight Riders scoring 204-5. Jason Roy, 56 off 29. Do you remember him, Dan? He used to be good. Nitish Rana cashing in, captain fantastic, 48 off 21 to finish off the innings. And David Visa, couple of sixes, 12 off 3 balls. When Dhoni did 12 off 3 balls, everyone went mental. So I feel like we should give Visa some love for capping the innings in some style.
Capital Summit, like 6 off 1 ball, wasn't it?
Well, look, yeah, he did. Yeah, he came in as impact sub and hit 1-6, and that was pretty good. And then Royal Challengers Bangalore in response, it started pretty well. Same old story. Virat and Faf. Pretty strong power play, or pretty strong start to the power play. But they got clawed back by KKR, who's two of their spinners bowled very well, and it was a classic combination of decent defensive bowling and regular wickets, meaning that RCB ended up 21 runs short. That brings their record to 4-4, Dan. They're probably the more notable team to talk about, at least in terms of who might win the tournament. I maintain that KKR are the best team to watch in the IPL. Every single game they play in.
They've got vibes.
Yeah, they've got amazing vibes. Like, crazy stuff happens every time they play. But RCB probably more likely to make the playoffs overall. A bit of a blow to their hopes, wasn't it?
KKR now have had 6 different opening partnerships in 8 matches. So, that's vibes in itself, isn't it? Just picking a random couple. I think someone tweeted a video of musical chairs on Twitter about their overnight. But we're going to have to go into some players and maybe debate as to whether they're good enough at this level. And I think that the jury's certainly out on Mr. Jagadeesan, who I was very unenthused by several auctions now, and just don't see career turnarounds for players of sort of 27, 28 who've never shown really a great deal of intent. I mean, even in the SMAT, he barely strikes at over 120 in his career, so I'm not sure what they're expecting at a high level. Jason Roy, seems to be like a pleasing return to some semblance of form for him. And what I've noticed a little bit with Jason Roy is he's now gone back. I don't know if someone said anything to him, but something that I've actually picked up on before I mentioned is that when he was struggling, he kind of lost the confidence to play 6 hitting shots. taking the aerial option for boundaries. In this renaissance, he seems to be doing it a lot more. So I don't know if someone's mentioned that to him, but either way, it seems to be working.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's obviously pleasing to see Roy playing well, not just from an English point of view, but he is one of the more exciting batsmen on the circuit when he's going well. Is Jacker decent, just off the top of your head? Is he the guy who got 250 in not the Syed Mushtaq Ali, the other trophy? I think he did.
Yeah, 277 in list A. Yeah.
Look, I mean, that's not a bad score. That's a bit of intent there. I kind of get you. I do kind of get your point though.
The split in standard in domestic cricket is massive.
Yeah,
it's way bigger, like a Division 1 v Division 2 in county cricket.
Yeah, and I mean, I do also think that potentially he's, I don't want to say out of his depth, but they're asking a lot of a guy who is probably some way down the power ranking to come in and do that. I mean,
so far down my depth chart, it was off the page. So,
yeah.
Yeah, because he played for CSK for a bit as well. 11 matches in the IPL, averaging just over 16 at a strike rate of just over 112, that tells its own story, really. And I mean, like I said, I don't know what you're expecting from a player who strikes like 120 in SMAT.
I don't know if they're expecting anything really. I suppose the reason they've done it is because Gurbaz flattered to deceive a little bit. Litton Das was probably an impulse buy based on one innings, and Sam Billings went home. So
they've had these wicket-keeping problems for several years now, because obviously Billings was obviously the good choice for them last year in terms of the best keeper, the best batter, but then obviously takes up the overseas slot. So they sort of messed around with that combination quite a lot and played domestic keeper. Was it? I can't remember the guy's name. Is it Indrajit? I think it was last year.
Could have been Indrajit. They had Sheldon Jackson as well, didn't they?
And Sheldon Jackson, and again, both of those guys don't strike well in the SMAT. So what? Whoever's doing this scouting and talent ID and auction strategy for KKR really probably needs to upskill a little bit. To be honest with you.
Yeah, I do think. I mean, like I say, I think they are a lot of fun. There's a lot of vibes, and they've been involved in some crazy matches. And this one wasn't a bad one, to be honest, but they don't really make sense. Look, they're 3 and 5. There's still a very slim shot for them. Mathematically, it is possible. Let's say, but I think it's tough. RCB, like I said, they're 4 and 4. It is a concern, isn't it, that nobody besides Kohli, Faf, and Maxwell is scoring serious runs in this side.
Yeah, and this is again what we spoke about this before the tournament, in the fact that it was completely unreasonable to expect Dinesh Karthik to be able to perform the heroics of last season, just the same as it was unreasonable for anyone to expect Josh Butler to have done the same thing for Rajasthan as well. Like, mean reversion is almost always going to happen in these type of circumstances, and quelle surprise it has. As you say, if it's not Kohli, it's not Faf, and it's not Maxwell, who are getting the runs. Lomraw is done okay in this match. I think he's an all right use of a spin hitter. So he came in after 35 balls today. This seems to be a pretty good entry point for him, just as the spinners are likely to do the bulk of their work. So he could contribute if he's used in the right role. Who I'm not a buyer of at all is Prabhadesai or Anuj Rawat, who's now been dropped. Again, it's the same argument as what we've just been talking about at KKR. You can't hit at a high rate in the SMAT. What makes anyone think that they're going to be able to do it in the IPL? It's like in county cricket. Like, if you've got a guy averaging 35 against 80-mile-an-hour bowlers, what's going to happen when you face Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins and Kagiso Rabada and Nortje in Test cricket? Oh yeah, well, you're going to average 25 or 20 because like they're better. It's just the same as the SMAT comparisons here, and also. I'm going to be really honest with you. I don't really understand the point of Shabazz Ahmed in the team. What does he actually bring? And so to back up, reinforce what I'm saying here, I had a look at his career data playing for RCB. He's now played well over 30 matches, so we're not looking at tiny sample sizes at all. So his net economy, and that's his balls, so runs per over batting and minus his runs per over bowling conceded, is now over minus 1.5, which is not great at all, obviously.
I think you're being kind by saying that's not great. I mean,
an average of around, batting average of around 17, bowling average not shy of 40, not far shy of 40. And you wonder what on earth Hesson and co see in this guy.
well, I mean, it beats me. To be honest, I don't really get it. I mean, a lot of things about RCB I don't really get. Good news for them is that Rajat Patidar is allegedly on his way back and should be included soon. Bad news is that they've played all of their home matches for the league season so far.
That's another big problem, isn't it?
Now, they have 6 to go. They'll all be on the road, including a few toughish venues that might not suit exactly what they want to do. Saying that they've blown the first half of the tournament is probably a bit strong. I'd say they're certainly not out of it. How much of a challenge do they have coming up, do you reckon?
Look, they're not out of it, but I think it's going to be really tough now. So I actually have a view that I'm not convinced that the Chinnaswamy is a great home ground for RCB, or the current roster of the RCB, I should say, because they have a team which, generally speaking, are more rotation oriented than the average team. So the last 2 seasons before this one, they qualified both times with a negative net boundary percentage. They've got a negative net boundary percentage again this time. So it's obvious to me, look, the fact that they were 4-3 after 7 games this year and they had a negative net boundary percentage as well, that they are crushing their opponents in non-boundary run production and prevention. So the Chinnaswamy, obviously, around the size of a postage stamp, probably suits their opponent's roster more than it actually suits them. So I don't think all hope's lost. The fact, even though they've got to go play 6 games on the road, I think what is the problem? There's several problems for me. One is the fact that they're probably going to have to go at bare minimum 4-2 in the last 6, and turn around a negative net run rate. And that might not even be good enough. They may have to go 5-1 to qualify. And this is the knock-on effects that we're seeing now from 4 qualifying from 10, which is significantly more difficult from 4 qualifying from 8. The other factor is that, and I said this I think before the tournament, just don't buy half their domestic players at all. Their domestic recruitment's really weird. We mentioned Paradiso. I mentioned Andrew. I think I paid 3 crore for last year. But I mentioned Shiraz Ahmed. Vaishak has now come in and not really pulled up any trees. He's going at an economy north of 10 so far, and it just seems to me that it's a bit Galactico-ish, which is
100% is. Yeah,
it's always been the RCB way. And so, like Real Madrid, when they had like Roberto Carlos, Beckham, Ronaldo, Zidane, and then they had like some 16-year-old playing right back. Like, that's what it's like. And I just think that there's too many holes in their team. The difference in the difference in standard between the best and the worst in sort of 15-player squad they want to choose from is big, and so is the salary discrepancy. And I mean that potentially probably can't. I mean, I'm not a player, so I wouldn't really be able to say with complete confidence this is the case, but it can't be great from a sort of team morale perspective that you've got a guy getting paid about 100 times what you're getting paid.
No, it's got to be a bit weird. And actually, off the record, we've spoken to some players who have been involved in the IPL, and they have said that some of the big boys can behave a bit standoffish. Like they want you to know your place in a way. They didn't name names. They didn't say who they were talking about, and they didn't say it was all of them as well. But there's the pay differential is certainly a thing. And it must create a strange environment, right? Like, one person's flying on a private jet, and you're driving a Fiat Punto. It's a little bit of a split. A few,
And you're outperforming them as well. So that's an even problem.
a few small points from the game. Kohli got a decent 50. If people want to give him some credit, it was sort of all right. I thought it was weird how he was out hitting a half tracker completely flat when he could have hit it. He could have hit it into the Bay of Bengal from Bengaluru. Like he could have hit it back to Kolkata, that ball, and instead he hit it flat.
37, I guess. Six boundaries and 37 balls.
There was a fair amount of carnage happening at the other end. I'm prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that it was okay. The man,
Do you really think it would be any different if there wasn't carnage going on at the other end?
Maybe. I think it's not. There's not. I think in this particular circumstance, if someone said the way Kohli played was close to optimal because he did represent their best chance of victory, I would agree with that. There are games, and you're absolutely right. And there was that big, who was it, Simon Doull, who said it was about a milestone, and everyone was like, "How do you know it's about a milestone?" It's like, it's not the point about the milestone. Take that out of the equation and just think about what he's saying, which is that he's using too many balls. That's the thing. And in some circumstances, I think in that game,
very few players are not preoccupied by milestones. I'll say that.
Well, I don't want to retread old ground on that because we talked about it for fucking ages. But
the biggest one I ever saw was the heartbreaker was James Vince. I think it was on 99 in the Big Bash.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that off the. He was distraught.
He was really sad. He just won his game. It was like a semi-final as well. It was a big game, and he was absolutely devastated that someone bowled a wide and didn't let him get have a shot at his 100. I think he was on like 96, so he had to hit a 4.
Yeah. One hit or something. Yeah,
it was just like, look at the bigger picture, mate. But look, what I'm saying, I think, is that sometimes batting like this is okay, and I think it kind of was okay. He tried to put his foot down. The shot he played to get out, I'd criticise that because I think you. At the Chinnaswamy, and Faf's been doing it all season. You hit the bad ball for 6. You don't hit it for 4. You need to hit it for 6. KKR hit twice as many 6s as RCB.
This is what I say about the net boundary percentage for RCB has been 4.
Well, I wonder, Dan. I mean, I would be interested this season if you looked at, and I don't know if you'd have it to hand, if you looked at net boundary runs, because Faf has been hitting so many 6s and Maxwell have been hitting so many 6s. But Virat hasn't. He's having a really good year for 6s for him. It's like a plus 6% year, which isn't. He's not destroying the league with that, but it's okay. Faf, I think when I looked, was over 10, and Maxwell was over 10 as well. So you can afford to hit slightly fewer boundaries if half your boundaries are 6s, because. And this isn't really for your benefit, but if you are wondering at home and you don't know what I'm talking about, 6 is more than 4. So, it is an option. So I wonder if that factors in. And the final thing I wanted to say was Siraj bowled kind of okay again in the middle of RCB's carnage. With the ball, Hasaranga showing a little bit of form, which is nice for them. Anyway, should we move on to one of the other 2 games because we've got some.
Let's do it.
Right, what I'm going to do, because we're up to 19 minutes and we have to put some ads in, is hit the break button. So we'll be back in 10 seconds. I'm going to answer the super chat from Anime Fan after the break, and then we'll talk the other 2 matches.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cricket Podcast. I said I'd answer the Super Chat. Before I do that, I'm going to plug one of our sponsors, Manscaped.com, the top guys in below the belt men's grooming. Get your testicles sorted out. Are they hairy? Are they uncomfortable? Head over to manscaped.com, use the code CricketPod and get yourself 20% off and free shipping. You can take it from me and the rest of the boys at the Cricket Pod. This is a quality product. They sent us some goods to test, and boy, have we tested them. So once more, manscaped.com, use the code CricketPod. Anime Fan says, if CSK could get rid of Stokes and replace him with Milne, how much would that raise their ceiling? Also, what does Dan make of Rahane and Paterana? Well, let's do a little CSK diversion. They're having a hell of a year. Can you answer those questions? Like Stokes and Milne, with what their team needs, that's probably a bonus, isn't it?
What did I say about Ben Stokes before the tournament? I predict him to be flop of the tournament.
I don't even know if he's played enough to be flop of the tournament.
He definitely has, because spending about a fifth of your budget he's played a couple of times. That's about it.
He was too injured to bowl in one of them, and then
low expectations on anyway. Yeah, I mean Adam Milne. I mean, anyone who knows me at Birmingham knows that I'm a massive fan of Adam Milne. He played for us in the first year of the 100. Couldn't play last year because he was injured at the last minute. But we've retained him for this year. So obviously, just by definition, is someone that I think a lot of, both as a player and as a human as well. So he would be a really good addition, I think, to this CSK team. 90 mile an hour, bowling any phase, including death, which is, I think, a bit of a hole for them at the moment, or could be a hole. Makes sense.
Then the other part was about Rahane and Paterana.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to go with Matisha Paterana to start with. And now I've known about this guy for a while, about 2 or 3 years, way before he signed for CSK first time, about people calling him the junior Malinga and stuff like that. And he's got this, obviously, anyone who's seen him play will know this, he's got this really weird action that almost looks like he's bowling underarm sometimes, but it must be really difficult to face, being so unconventional. And these bowlers tend to be really awkward for batters to face. And you definitely get a point of difference in terms of being sight unseen when you're facing a guy like this for the first time or the second time, until you're really going to get used to him. So, I mean, maybe he's enjoying a little bit of that at the moment, that sort of sight unseen benefit. But I hope he evolves and continues to be a real prospect to watch. Now, Rahane is the reason why I wanted to go with Paterana to start with rather than Rahane is because Rahane, I think, is a real indicative position of what CSK have done well. In that they're now, the players are saying that Dhoni believes in them. Dhoni's going to tell them to go out and play with freedom and no fear and just go and do your best, enjoy it and stuff. And I'm telling you now, I know so many players, and they will all tell you that is exactly what they want to hear. People who are like the coach or the captain tell them to do. What you don't want is the coach or captain to turn around and go, "Oh, you got to do this with responsibility," and blah 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 blah. You want to go out and enjoy it and feel backed. And I think that CSK as a team, because it's not just Rahane. There are other players as well who are doing this too. We spoke about Gaikwad and his 6 hitting compared to previous years and stuff on previous pods. Now you mentioned it on the pods that I haven't been on as well. So it's transferring itself throughout the whole team. And I'm not, I'm a big, anyone who knows me knows I'm a big proponent of data and a massive advocate of that. But you need to have that environment which allows people to thrive as well. And it looks like Dhoni and CSK have provided that for their batters, and more power to them for that.
Yeah, I think some credit has to go to Rahane as well. Obviously, he's had a look at what he was good at, and maybe more recently, to be perfectly honest, what he's been bad at, because he hasn't been good in the IPL for quite a long time. And what he's doing this year is so much better in so many areas that really it's it's very difficult to look at it and say that that's purely down to chance, or even just down to, like, I'm sure the environment helps and all, and like you say, players always sort of talk about this, but like the guy must take some serious credit himself for taking that difficult look at himself and saying, like, what is it that's actually going to make me a viable T20 player? Now, at the beginning of this IPL, it probably looked like to him that his India career was over. Obviously, news this week changes that. He's back in the World Test Championship side for the final, so maybe it isn't over. Maybe he looked at, like, my theory is he may have looked at himself and been like, I'm not going to last long in the IPL, or I'm not going to last another season in the IPL if I have another sub 110 strike rate year for the fourth year in a row. And he's come out and he's always been a shot maker, but he's now trying those shots from ball one. I think we talked about his 15 ball strike rate on the last show. Someone tweeted it to us. 177 this year.
Yeah,
it's up massively. Like he's doing it from ball one. And I think there's probably quite a few players out there. We were talking about Kohli in the last segment. There's and because he might be one of them. Not really to rag on Kohli. He's kind of having an okay season, to be honest. But there are so many players with a game that is so far from optimal in terms of what you want to do to be a good T20 player, that if you just try and do the optimal thing, just like a simple decision to try and score a little bit quicker, then you can make huge strides forward in terms of development and in terms of your value to a team. Like it's
no.
And I think that's what's happened to Rahane. Like he hasn't actually got better at cricket, has he? Like Dhoni's helped him. Like, let's say Dhoni, the environment Dhoni creates helps him with his mindset. He's confident. He knows he's going to be back. He knows he's got the spot maybe for 5 or 6 matches. He's happy, and so he can express himself. And then he thinks, I'm going to be. I've looked at my game, and what I need to do is hit more boundaries. Put those two things together, and you have a little bit of magic, can't you?
I think what frustrates me sometimes is that you've just, articulated that to his keep your voice out. You articulated that very eloquently, but and of course you make complete logical sense. However, what frustrates me is that so many players just don't see it. I mean, poor guy in terms of bashing that he gets on this pod, but KL Rahul will be obviously a really...
Oh God, he got a hammer in on the last show.
I haven't heard that one yet. I'm going to have to tune in after this. Yeah, I mean, he's just... Yeah, that's one great example. Warner, another one. But I think maybe Warner is a bit different in terms of, I think that maybe the mind's willing, but perhaps he's just not as good as he used to be. But you're right. Like, it does take just a bit of a mental switch to flick. And sometimes you can even prove that even working with players. I've done this before with players, and you show them a few options that they take, and you go through their data, and you say, a lot of people think, oh, like Dan, he's just a boundary intent merchant guy. Not really. I just know that it wins you matches. But what I might turn around to say to someone with like a 130 strike rate is, can you identify 4 or 5 balls in 100 that you can attack for boundaries rather than trying to work into a gap?
It's a small improvement when you put it like that.
100%. That's not a lot to change. That's right. 15 or 20 strike rate.
We've got one more super chat, then we're going to get on with some other games. SHS says, a depressed and frustrated RCB fan at this point. I feel like they deliberately fuck up. 16 years, they haven't learnt their lesson. I don't care about the playoffs. It's a shame about being trophyless. I feel like the host of a 606 phone-in with messages like that. I'm sure there are people out there who feel your pain on that front. Right,
I'm on the way back from the Chinnaswamy.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. 606, if you're one of the Indian fans, it's like a radio call-in show after all the football matches on a Saturday, and you always get angry football fans like, I can't believe it, we've been relegated again. Right, so yesterday Gujarat Titans took on Mumbai. Gujarat They batted first. And it was an innings with a little bit of ebb and flow. There was some early-ish wickets. Hardik didn't really go anywhere. Vijay Shankar, he's still in the IPL. Shubman Gill, 50. He was someone's shout for the orange cap on this show, so he stays in the hunt. Like he's within striking distance, I think. Arjun Tendulkar, 1 wicket off 9 balls. 1 wicket off 9 balls. 1 wicket for 9 runs, and they didn't bowl him at the death in this game. Which was notable. End of the innings, it kind of got taken away from them a little bit though. The Mumbai Indians by Tewatia, David Miller, and Abhinav Manoa, who all struck at over 200. Rahul Tewatia, 20 off 5 balls is not bad. That's not bad at all.
Which is flicking with players.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah. I've got some notes on him. I was impressed with this innings and the way he thinks about things as well. He did an interview, I think last week, where he went into some depth about his process of practice and stuff like that. And there's lessons to be learnt, is what I'd say. In the Mumbai Indians, in response, lost an early wicket. Rohit Sharma gone for 2. Bit of an up and down year for him. More up than down, especially football versus last year. And it was a bit of a wet squib, the chase, to be honest. Nobody really got going. There were a few boundaries hit near the end. Arjun Tendulkar got his first 6, his first bat. I'm sure Dad was happy with that.
1 for 9 and 13 off 9 balls of the bat. That ain't too bad. There's a return for the day. It makes him Mumbai's man of the match.
They lose by 55 runs. Someone had a question for you from Twitter. I can't remember who it was. So whoever it was, thank you for the question. Are you a buyer of Naira Ball, Dan?
Kind of, beginning to be a little bit, yeah. So okay, so oh god, I really shouldn't say this, but yeah, we'll do it. When they assembled their team at the auction, I thought they were hopeless. Like, and I didn't see, in my opinion, a well thought out strategy at all. From them, from a recruitment perspective, you can never write off a team with Rashid Khan in it, and you can never write off a team with Hardik Pandya in it. But I was pretty unimpressed as a whole. God, they proved me wrong. So last year they obviously
won the league,
yeah. And with a negative net boundary defense, I think in the group stages, which is I was like, just blew my mind completely. And they're basically doing the same thing again this year. So, yeah, I'm now thinking to myself, maybe I could learn something actually from the way that they're winning matches. Last year was a bit different in terms of they won just like all the high variance moments in matches. I don't think that's quite the same this year.
I'd agree with that. I was going to say one of my points. One of my points for this match was exactly that. Actually, was that last year I wouldn't say they fluked the league, but they fluked the championship. But they certainly fluked a lot of games on the way to the championship. This year, I'm a much bigger fan of what they're doing. I like it, and I think we always say things like role definition and stuff on this show, but they have that. Like the players are in the right position. People know what they're doing. Even Hardik is like this kind of anchor, floating hitter. No, he's not really a floating hitter. I don't even know what he is. Like he is kind of an anchor. It kind of makes sense in and amongst everything else. Like he's a player with the range of talent to score at 130 or up it if he needs to.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really need to be the hitter with Tewatia and Khan and Miller. Yeah, carry on.
I like him as captain as well. Like I don't necessarily perceive him to be some tactical genius, but by the same token, the players seem to want to play for him and enjoy the environment. And we've already said that's a key part of being a successful franchise. So yeah, I like what they're doing now. I'm going to be studying an air ball a little bit more and seeing whether it is actually a thing or not.
Yeah. They hit a lot of sixes. They hit a shit ton of sixes, which is another thing that I quite like about them.
they've got this kind of template where they're going to try with the ball. They try and win the first two phases, and with the bat, they're kind of like the opposite, isn't it? They sort of try and set that platform and then look to just completely mash the death overs. Interesting. It is interesting. I need to do some digging on this. So, am I a buyer? Potentially.
Yeah, I quite like them. The one thing that I'd hold against them, and I did say this on the last show. Obviously, they win this match, so it's if you want to make your points look really good, this isn't the time to bring it up, maybe. But I don't know if their home ground suits the team as much as some other teams' home ground. Like I do think that could be a slight weakness. We're talking about a league here as well, where the difference between Gujarat and Mumbai in this game, although Gujarat run out fairly clear winners, play this match 10 times, Mumbai win at least 3 of them. Like it's actually it's a fairly narrow gap between a team that are good and I think are good and a team that I think are actually quite bad, and it's really within the realms of sort of mathematical chance that
it's because there's 3 or 4 players in a bad team who can be matched on a day.
Yeah,
we both spoke about this, I think, at length in the pre-tournament pod about the guys, the KKR, Mumbai. They've got match winners, but they've also got a load of junk in their squad as well, and that they can win matches even though they've got junk in their squad.
Yeah,
they can win 8+ matches to qualify is a completely separate debate.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about Mumbai because they are similar as a KKR. They're always worth tuning in for because you've got no idea what's going to happen. The bowling in this game, probably fair to say the wheels came off a little bit, particularly if you were Australian, as it sort of has happened in every match. Is there any realistic short-term solution to this mayhem? They're going at 17 and over in the last 5 overs of games in I think their last 3 matches. Like it's a nuts amount of runs that they're shipping to opposition players.
There is no solution to this, and I said this before the tournament started. The only solution you have to this is if Jofra Archer suddenly becomes match fit and gets play the best cricket that he's played for a number of years now. I don't look at their bowling and think that it's particularly good at all. I don't think that's a shock. I've been very clear on that over a number of weeks and months now. I was stunned when I think they traded in Jason Behrendorff, and he's a solid enough player, but like I remember Twitter was going mad as if he was like some hybrid of like Malinga, Rashid Khan, and I don't know, peak Shaheen Afridi or something like that, like all rolled into one. And I'm like, no, he's like a 7 out of 10 player.
I don't even know if I'd give him that, to be honest, in the IPL.
Riley Meredith is not, in my opinion, is not good enough at this level and has never had any real success bowling at the death consistently. And if it wasn't for Ross's favourite Piyush Chawla, who has like come back out of nowhere. I mean, the guy's averaging 17 at an economy just over 7 in 7 matches. They're bloody good. 11 wickets. And if it wasn't for him, they'd be even worse.
Yeah.
Cameron Green's going up 10 and over. And the Shakeen I don't see. He's another Shabazz Ahmed for me.
Yeah.
Don't see it. Just don't see it. So overall, what are you going to do? These problems can only be solved with recruitment. When you're spending stupid amounts of money on batters, don't be surprised when you've got no bowlers left. I mean, RCB did it for years. They probably still do it to some degree. And like, it's not like this is an unknown thing. It's like so obvious. If it's so obvious to me, it's got to be obvious to the franchises. I don't know if it's like an ego trip or money for marketing or whatever it is, but my word, it's the most unbalanced squad I've seen, I think, ever in this tournament.
It is, yeah. I mean, like it may well be. Like the batting is nuts. Like that top 6 is even with people kind of not firing on all cylinders, it's still like, Gujarat get 207. That was in play. That was well in play for this batting lineup, and it took good bowling.
13 of 21 balls.
It took good bowling and some sort of questionable batting to put it out of play, but.
I thought they were chasing 107, not 207.
But at half time, I think it's like Gujarat fans might have been a little bit like, that is not a settled. The game is not settled. Yeah.
Mumbai 6. Yeah.
Right. Last game. We're going to get to the last game in a second. We're actually going to hit the break button one more time, and then we're going to get to that. And someone had something to ask you about. People batting first, so think about that, and I'll ask you the question.
Yeah, I
properly.
saw that tweet. Yeah.
Anyway, here's the break.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cricket Podcast for part 3 of our Wednesday show. We've got one game to talk about, then we've got some questions. Before we get that, 2 pieces of information. If you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening anywhere, make sure you're subscribing to the Cricket Pod. As I said, there's no show on Friday. Next show will be on Monday. To get that delivered to your device, your laptop, your phone, your Sony Walkman. Was that digital? I don't know if it was digital. Maybe not your Sony Walkman. We can't do that. Make sure you've hit subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, do hit like. It makes a big difference to viewer numbers. Second...
available for your Patreon members.
Second, head over to seriouscricket.co.uk and use the code TCP23 for 10% off your cricket equipment for this season. It is slowly warming up in the UK. We've got 19 degrees on the way this weekend, apparently, Dan. Just in time for you to get back from Vegas. So I'm sure the weather's been good.
90 degrees.
And it's the cricket season, basically. So get yourself over there, find the most expensive bat, buy it, and save yourself 10% with the code TCP23. Right, Dan, the last game of this show was Delhi Capitals v Sunrisers Hyderabad. Delhi batted first. Sunrisers, they bowled well, and they kept them to just 144. It looked like it was in the bag for the Delhi Capitals. Bhuvi Kumar, 2 wickets, 11 runs. And he went for 4 off his last ball. Insane. Yeah. Serious return to form. All round it was pretty good. I mean, Marco Jansen did his thing where he bowled 1 good over and 1 horror over. But, push him aside. Decent effort by the Sunrisers. Picking up a few run-outs near the end as well to boost the wicket columns. In response, Harry Brook auditioned to be the England opener when they get rid of Zach Crawley and bring back Bairstow later in the year. 7 off 14 for him, and it put the team under a little bit of pressure. Mayank had a decent knock, maybe his second of the season. I'm not going anywhere quickly, but his runs, which is good for him, 49 off 39. But there wasn't a lot of help from anyone else. Rahul Tripathi, 15 off 21. Abhishek Sharma, 5 off 5. Aidan Markram, captain, not so fantastic, 3 off 5. Nearly dragged back by Sundar and Klaasen. And I say nearly, and I don't really mean nearly. I mean, that's quite a disappointing loss for Sunrisers. It's got to be a tough one to take, losing after keeping the opposition to 144, Dan.
Well, I think there's a few clear points here to make. The first one is a general point, and to me it's completely obvious. If you're chasing 144 or whatever score you're chasing, unless it's a score under 137, a cricket team should never be 137 for 6 chasing off 20 overs and lose. It's just intolerable. It's unacceptable. And Aidan Markram was actually seemed to endorse that view in his post-match interviews and talking about an unacceptable lack of intent and perhaps a lack of a will to win. I mean, looking at this, right? Harry Brook, Rahul Tripathi, Abhishek Sharma, Aidan Markram placed 45 balls between them, almost half the innings. They didn't score a single boundary.
Ouch.
If you're chasing 145, you should not leave yourself in a position where you've got to hit 60 off the last 6 overs.
No,
That's just absurd.
not on a pitch that was not that easy to bat on as well. I mean, like, 144 doesn't really matter what the pitch is to some extent. But
Well, no, because you can play in innings like Mayank Agarwal played, and that's absolutely fine.
yeah, but you can win. You can quite easily win. To Delhi's credit, they did bowl well, and a big factor that I didn't see many people talk about here is that they only bowled one extra. They bowled one no ball, and in a way, by doing that, they kind of make that score of 144 155.
Yeah, I know what you mean there. Yeah.
It becomes it becomes significantly harder. You know, you'd hope if you were batting over 20 overs, you'd be chucked a few wides here and there. I mean, Sunrisers themselves in this particular match only bowled 4 extras, but it was good from Delhi. It was good.
I read a study a while back, and it actually seemed to suggest that there was some form of a relationship between a batter's level of intent and the amount of extras that get bowled at them. So I think they said that Andre Russell had like one of the highest extra counts against him per ball, like runs per ball in extras, compared to anyone else. And it, obviously that's very logical, because there's a guy who's going to pummel you somewhere, and then you're going to try and hide the ball like in a fine margin area, for example, and you're worried about putting it in their arcs, so then you push it wide, and there's a very small tolerance level for that type of thing. So yeah, it makes complete sense, and maybe that one extra that Sunrisers got on their batting card was to some extent a product of their own lack of intent.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I thought it was a really miserable performance from Sunrisers, and really, it's the final nail in the coffin. They are now.
They're so much better on paper than what we've seen.
They've won 2 out of 5 matches.
2 out of 7.
2 out of 7, yeah. So they've won 2, lost 5 is what I meant to say. But yeah, 2 out of 7.
Yeah.
3 in a row now. I can't see a way back for them, and I wonder a little bit. I wonder whether they're a season or 2 away in the batting lineup from knowing what they want to do, and the other thing I wonder is whether this team would be a lot better if instead of trying to find their way as they went, they had a coach or a captain with a bit more of a template about what they wanted from the side. And I think that might be a little bit harsh to lay at Markram's door, but I think Lara probably has to take some of the blame for this. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to convince me on the fact that just because you're a great player doesn't mean to say that you're going to be a great coach. Certainly, I think that they've shown at points in this tournament a level of tactical naivety. What I don't like as well in their batting group is that they've messed around with roles. So earlier on in this pod, we've talked about role clarity and having clear defined roles. It's something that Gujarat and CSK have done pretty well with this year, and Sunrisers haven't done that with their batting group. So first of all, they had Harry Brook as like a middle order player, and then they realised that he was struggling against spin, which probably they should have worked out a little bit more about before they spent 16 crore on him. But and then they started trying to open him instead. And then that has the knock-on effect of the fact that Abhishek Sharma now, who got like a load of runs at a high strike rate last season, now doesn't get to open, and he gets to bat number 4. So he's the 4 guy. I don't see Markram as a 5. I see him as a 4. 5 is the entry point that typically for a number 5 is too late for Markram. I don't see him as like that devastating hitter. I think the other problem is that they've got, out of their top 6, 5 of them are right-handers. And I don't know if you saw my tweet the other day, but 3 times so far in these 7 matches, the opposition's player of the match has been the left-arm orthodox spinner, who's the good matchup for the bowling team. So, look, again, it's not rocket science, but this basic level of roster construction seems to have bypassed the Sunrisers management group.
On that point, to really hammer it home, Dan, I reckon if you went back through their games as well, there'd be teams who don't have a left arm spinner. So you're probably looking. It's probably not even 3 of 7. It's probably like 3 of 5 or something like that. Like basically,
anyone who's got a high quality left arm spinner's got a pretty good chance of being man of the match. Yeah,
I know they got tonked by KKR. Obviously, they don't have a left arm spinner. But
they would have both 8 overs, a leg spin, and a mystery spinner.
Yeah, so I reckon if you wanted to make that point even more impressive, you probably could. I don't have much more to say on either of these two teams. Projects for next year, I think, both of them at this point. Sunrisers, I think, have got
disappointment of the tournament. Sunrisers.
Yeah, I'd agree. I had very high hopes of them, and they've let me down, Dan. They've
let me down too.
They've let us both down. They've let everyone down. They let me down. They let you down. They let all the Sunrisers Hyderabad fans down.
They let themselves down.
Let's go through a few questions. Daniel says, curious about the success of teams batting first, and if Dan has any comments on it. That was the question. Most recent 7 games have been won by the team batting first. What's happening?
Okay, so I something I actually noticed myself when I was preparing some data for the Substack that I wrote the other day, and I think what teams are doing now is that this impact sub rule has kind of balanced out the benefit of chasing versus batting first, and I think in the past without the impact sub, teams have batted first and they weren't really sure what a good target was, and they didn't want to go too hard in case they lost wickets and stuff like that. But what this has now allowed them to structure up differently by picking the extra batter if they're batting first, and then having an impact sub, which is almost always a bowler for the team that's batting first, bowler coming on for a batter in the second innings. And you get some crazy scenarios where like Shah Rukh Khan is batting at number 8 for Punjab and stuff like that. I mean, like, if that's not depth, I don't know what it is. And that allows the other batters to go that bit harder earlier on in their innings. And people might turn around and say, well, the average number of balls faced by number 7 is about 7 balls and stuff. And that's why that might be true. It's also irrelevant because having that safety net of using PBKs as an example, Jitesh Sharma at number 7 or I'm current at number 7 and Shah Rukh Khan number 8, is that as a batter, a top order batter, you can go that little bit harder earlier on in your innings because you've got the safety net that can bow you out if you lose early wickets.
Yeah,
and you can't underestimate that, definitely. And for me, I think that's a big factor into why there's more of a level playing field this year between teams batting first and batting second.
Yeah, Dazzlytics got a really interesting question here, and it's on the topic of the 2 teams we were just talking about. How should the bottom two teams, so Delhi and Sunrisers, plan the next half of the season? Like, what's the point of that? What should they be looking to get out of the next 6 matches, 7 matches?
Information.
And what do you mean by information?
So, I would be using these. So, I mean, because we're realistically accepting that they're probably going to have to win all 5 of their last matches to qualify because their net run rate is so atrocious that even winning 4 out of their... I'll rephrase that. Winning 6 out of their last 7 is probably not going to be enough because of their net run rate. So they need to win 7 out of 7 to qualify, which is virtually impossible, I think. Information. Yeah, so basically trying to work out what their best combinations are for next season, trying to working out which players they want to retain, which players they feel like they can get rid of and free up some budget to make some astute signings at the next auction. So for me now, if I was involved in one of those franchises, it would all be about planning. So you're not sacrificing this rest of this time because it's already been sacrificed. but your focus now turns towards planning for the future and to try and get an extra month of time advantage on your planning than the other teams are still fighting for qualification.
Yeah. I think we've got time for 2 more questions. Navneet's got a good one. What has been the most surprising pattern in this IPL? One good and one bad. So what are you, broadly speaking, what have you been surprised by that's good, and what have you been surprised by that's bad?
Surprise level that's good is attacking intent, and I think that's with a bat. I think that's a big factor of the impact sub as well. Like I said earlier, I think that's changed quite a bit. Freed up players to go a little bit harder, although some players have still got a lot of work to do in that respect. What have I been disappointed by? I wouldn't say that I've been disappointed by that much, because 1, we've got a fairly compact table. 2, we've had so many last couple of ball drama matches as well. So it's been great to watch. I think I'm going to throw Sunrisers in as my disappointment.
Yeah,
I had pretty high expectations for them on paper, and it just hasn't worked out at all.
I'd probably agree with that. I think I'm not really surprised, but I do think that there's the games have been so good and the tournament has been so good that this isn't really an issue. But there have been a lot of injuries, and there have been a few players that have opted out of this tournament. And I think there's potentially up to 10 players who I think could add value to this tournament that aren't in it because they're injured or because they're not there for another reason. And that's a shame, but it's a very, what's the opposite of a silver lining? It's a very small negative. Yeah, it's a very small dark cloud. There's not really that much of an issue, I don't think. We're having a great tournament. Final question, Dan. Go on.
So the other thing about is that you notice with injuries, especially from leading domestic players, Bumrah, for example, with injuries, you start to notice that the depth of quality of the domestic players tails off very quickly. And we spoke about sort of the RCB and the KKR. They've almost got sort of 3-4 filler players, almost, if you like, where they're kind of. Maybe it's a bit harsh. They're making up the numbers. Mumbai, a bit harsh to say they're making up the numbers, but it's not a million miles from that. Well, they want to be that harsh, but yeah. They certainly don't add value over the average player, anyway, in my opinion. So we're seeing that a little bit more as well. And I think that the only way you can change that is if you make another overseas player available, either as an impact sub or 5 out of 11 for a starting role.
And then I'm going to change the question slightly. Harminder has got the final question of the show. Who is your current top death bowler, and who is your current top finisher with the bat?
Oh, good question. Top death bowler, I tweeted this the other day, so I'm definitely not going to change my mind on this. That's Arshdeep Singh. I mean, the guy is unbelievable. I'm a massive fan of him, and I can't wait to see him in a Kent shirt in a few weeks' time after this tournament as well.
Big name. And with the bat?
Yeah, with the bat. Do you know what, right? When they paid all this money for him at Mega Auction last year, I thought they were nuts. Honestly, it blew my mind how much money they spent on him. But Rahul Tewatia has repaid back every single rupee of that fee so far.
He has been exceptional. That is true. I was going to say Shimron, but I think I can get behind. I think I can get behind Tewatia. I didn't mention that at the interview, like how he practices. Basically, he just practices hitting at the death. Like that is his full-time job. Putting himself in game scenarios, going out and practicing hitting 4 sixes in 4 balls. Yeah. And it makes a lot of sense, but not that many people do it.
Incredible, isn't it? Really? Yeah. I know some players who do that sort of stuff, but on the whole, they don't do it.
Yeah. I suppose he does have somewhat of a luxury in that he's getting 10 crore a year, isn't he? And he really can focus on it. Like it's not. He doesn't have to hedge his bets in any way. He can just do what the main employer in his life want him to do. which you can't. You actually can't necessarily do if you.
Well, that's maybe
else.
one of the things where he does benefit from Indian players not being able to play in overseas leagues as well, because he might go to. He was able to go and play in Big Bash or the 100 or CPL. Teams might have different requirements for him, so then he couldn't be that sort of hyper specialised player.
Right, Dan, we're going to wrap up now. Thanks for joining us. Have a good one in Vegas. Get home safe.
Yeah, looking forward to getting home now to this 19 degrees that you've promised me, Jeff.
Yeah, it's big, mate. Yeah, it's big. Have a good one, mate. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.